He moved to Fort Meade in 1967, where his father worked as a social worker. He thought he died and gone to heaven. He loved the Black Hills. In 1975, he became part of Covenant Players International Repertory Theater, spending the next 30 years traveling. His mom used to say he ran away and joined the circus. I could see your mom doing, yeah, that'd be your mom. It was an amazing experience working with and meeting incredible people, taking him to 10 countries on 4 continents and 49 of the 50 states. Somehow missing Rhode Island. Pretty small dot in the map. So 10 years ago, he met and married his wonderful wife, Elvira, who somehow keeps him on the straight and narrow, and she does a pretty good job of that. Yeah, I don't know, she does pretty good. He enjoys working with the Old Fort Meade Cavalry Museum, stories, and the occasional silly song. All that and a love of theater has combined to create several history programs, the latest being Stories and Songs from Old Fort Meade. This show has become a regular feature at the High Plains Western Heritage Center summer program, where it has been performed for people from all over the United States and countries. So without further ado, Randy Bender.
Well, good afternoon. Well, my name is Randy Bender, and I will be your guide today as we take a short tour through the history of Fort Meade, South Dakota. Fort Meade originally started in the summer of 1878, when troops marched south from Fort Abraham Lincoln to establish a post in the Black Hills region. Their mission was to maintain peace in the area. They were so successful that Fort Meade earned the title, the Peacekeeper Post. Well, today, there is still an old cemetery in a hilltop overlooking Fort Meade. It's the Old Fort Meade Cemetery. It's now part of the National Cemetery Network. And within its fence, there are 188 graves. Graves of men, women, and children, military and civilian, blacks, whites, Native Americans. All of them part of Fort Meade's history. Well, today, we're going to look at 3 of those people that are buried there, plus a 4th who has an important role to play in Fort Meade's history. We'll also be looking at some of the military traditions of the Frontier Army. You know, one tradition of our military has always been their music. And there is one song in particular that has been associated with the U.S. Cavalry. Now, as near as I've been able to tell, that song was written sometime in the late 1500s, early 1600s, probably coming to our shores with some of our early British settlers. Now, it's gone through some changes over the years, but if you heard the original, it's still recognizable. But in its current form, it got a brand new lease on life when it was used as the title song of a John Wayne Western, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. Around her neck, she wears a yellow ribbon. She wears it in the springtime and in the month of May. And if you ask her why the heck she wears it for her trooper in the U.S. Cavalry. Cavalry, cavalry. She wears it for her trooper in the U.S. Cavalry. Behind the door, her daddy keeps a shotgun. He keeps it with a double load of buckshot, so they say. And if you ask him why that ammunition, he'll say it's for that trooper in the U.S. Cavalry. But her son, he is a clever little fellow. His birthday was a year ago in the month of May. And if you ask him, son, who is your daddy? He'll say, my dad's a trooper in the U.S. Cavalry. He'll say, my dad's a trooper in the U.S. Cavalry. men of Old Fort Meade loved their music. Of course, there was the Fort Meade band that gave regular performances at the post, but they also did concerts throughout the Black Hills region. But then in addition, each troop was likely to have a man or two who was handy with a guitar or harmonica. And in the evenings, before taps was sounded, you could find them on the front porch of the barracks, singing songs of home, songs about the girl they'd left behind, songs that poked fun at life in the Army. Now, most of those songs had a humorous side to them, but, well, they didn't shy away from the realities of what life in the Army could mean. Now, that opening song, Yellow Ribbon, it closes with this verse. Upon a grave, she lays a wreath of flowers. She lays one in the winter and in the month of May. And if you ask her, who's that wreath to honor? She'll say, it's for my trooper, who's gone far, far away. She'll say, it's for my trooper, who's gone far, far away. Music was a way for them to keep their hopes, their memories, their dreams alive. It helped them to deal with the loneliness and the isolation that came with being at a frontier military post. And it gave them something to laugh at in what was often a very dull and monotonous existence. The scars upon my fingers tell of nails that was slow to ring off. A coat with an attitude gave me a kick in the side. It still hurts when I cough. The toenail that fell off my big toe was stomped on by a biggin named Jack, plus a mule named Billy, a hinny named Missy. It finally gave up growing back. Howdy, folks. Peter Coleman's the name. Farrier for the U.S. Cavalry. Any of you fine folks, can you tell me what a farrier does?
Shoot horses.
We shoe horses, right. And if you're doing that for the U.S. Cavalry, sir, you are going to see a lot of horses. Well, out here at Fort Meade, we had close to 1,000 of them. Another 200 to 300 mules. It was up to men like me to take care of them. Now, truth is, we weren't only just farriers, we were kind of veterinarians in disguise. You see, it wasn't until 1881 that the Army finally decided that, well, maybe they should start getting their vets from schools of actual veterinarian medicine. Up until then, it was up to men like me. Now, of course, a lot of a horse's problems have to do with its feet and legs, so a good farrier can help out a lot with just a few simple tools. And, well, taking care of a horse anyway is as much art as it is science. And some of them, they're just easy keepers. Well, they don't need much more than a flake of hay, a regular turnout, a clean trough of water. But others, they'll try you every which way. I mean, you'll shoe them regular, only to find out that they lost that shoe the next day, and some of them are so accident-prone, you would swear they spent all their spare time coming up with new ways to injure themselves. You know, a friend of mine, a trooper, said you could describe his life in these words. Overworked, underfed, dirty, bad shoes. And none of that was going to apply to his horse. I mean, that man's life depended on that mount. Why, everything we did was for the care and the well-being of those animals, even their saddles. The McClellan saddle, designed in 1849 by General George B. McClellan. You'll still find it being used today. But they were designed for the comfort of the horse, not the man. Everything we did. And even then, you'd still find an ornery one in the bunch. The fact is, that's how I ended up in the old post cemetery. Yeah, you know, I even got a write-up though in the local paper. Just a minute here. I want to make sure I get this right. I mean, those old papers, they just had a way with words. See, the Black Hills Press reported that I was admitted to hospital for the repair of injuries sustained by coming into contact with the business end of a vicious horse. Yeah, they got that part right. My name is Frank Bowler, little bachelor I am. I'm batching it out on an elegant plan. I live way out west on the Meade County plain, starving to death on my government claim. My house, it is built of the national soil. The walls are erected according to Hoyle. The roof has no pitch, but is level and plain. And I never get wet till it happens to rain. So hurrah for Meade County, the land of the free, home of the grasshopper, bedbug, and flea. I'll sing louder praises and shout louder fame while starving to death on me government claim. Top of the morning to you. Thomas Keogh be the name. Civilian. You heard me right. Civilian. I was not part of the Frontier Army. Wasn't even part of an army family, just a plain, ordinary civilian. And so what, you may be asking yourselves, am I doing here in stories about Old Fort Meade? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. You know, mostly when people think of the Frontier Army, they picture those gallant young men galloping across the plains on their noble steeds. That was just a wee bit of it. Mostly, they was ordinary men that said, I'll serve my country in exchange for $13 a month. And they weren't expected to be just soldiers, neither. They had to be carpenters and mechanics and lumberjacks. Many times they cut down the trees to saw the lumber to build their own barracks. They built corrals and barns and bridges. They strung telegraph lines. They protected the railroad crews and wagon trains. They guarded highways, byways, people, and flocks. But to my way of thinking, the most important thing they brought out our way was medical care. See, there's no law that said them army doctors had to take care of us civilians, but most of them did, and often at no charge. Why, some of them army doctors would go so far as to make regular rounds about their posts, sometimes riding out as far as 25 miles to check up on a family in their area. They was good doctors, too. Yeah, not like them charlatans that you'd find in old Scoop Town. Scoop Town. You see, that's what the troopers of Fort Meade called the town of Sturgis City back then. On account of some of the residents had a knack for scooping the pay out of them soldiers' pockets. But army doctors, they had to have certified medical degrees from recognized medical colleges. 4 of them won the Congressional Medal of Honor. Oh, but what am I doing here? Well, you see, I was what the Army politely referred to as a destitute civilian. And there was a lot of us around. I mean, disillusioned prospectors, shop owners gone bust, farmers, ranchers, tired of fighting the drought and the grasshoppers. But me, well, I ended up at the old post hospital one winter with severe frostbite, and well, I ended up losing both me feet. And if that weren't enough, I also came down with the typhoid. But those army doctors fought. They fought with every tool they had. But it wasn't enough. I ended up there on the old hilltop. frontier army. They even gave me a place to rest me tired old bones. And that is what I call being downright neighborly. So hurrah for Meade County, where the flea never dies, where the wind never quits, and the blizzards arise, where the snow is so deep, if in it you remain, you'll end up like me, on your government claim. All kinds came through the gates of Old Fort Meade, all of them with a story to tell, many of them with a song. And those old troopers, they weren't above taking another popular song and rewriting it just a bit to better tell their story. As I was walking that path to old Scooptown, as I was walking to Scooptown one day, passed a young trooper all wrapped in white linen, and cold as the clay. Now I saw by his outfit that he was a trooper, but not a word did he speak as I made to walk by. Let's sit down beside him, hear his sad story. He's shot in the chest, and he knows he must die. Mechanic, Private Charles Mechanic, Company M, 13th U.S. Cavalry. Proud to be a member of the only cavalry regiment to be organized right here, Fort Meade, South Dakota. And 1901 was the year. Oh, we saw a lot of changes in the fort that year. For one thing, they tore down all the old wooden barracks, built us brand new ones out of brick and locally quarried sandstone. We got new heating, new plumbing, and we were ready to move into the 20th century in style. And then we not only did our part to improve things at Fort Meade, but we helped the economy of Sturgis City too. Not just through all them construction contracts neither, but well, in some other ways. You see, 1901, that's also the year that the WCTU, that's the Women's Christian Temperance Union, they convinced Congress to pass a law to get rid of that scourge of the Army, alcohol. So Congress forbid the sale of beer and wine at the post canteens. Now, of course, all that is send all the troops into old Scooptown for the liquid refreshments, and well, it's reported that within 6 months, nearly every establishment in town had increased in size. They were hiring extra staff and were expanding their gambling facilities. Now, of course, the numbers of desertions also increased dramatically, and the sightings of drunken and passed out troops on the road to the fort were becoming a not uncommon occurrence. You know, but all that just goes to tell really how I ended up on that old hilltop. See, I really hadn't been in the Army all that long. I enlisted in July, got out in September. But in the line of duty, though, you might say. You see, it was my turn to stand guard one night, and one of our barracks mates came back from old Scooptown, just very much under the influence. And once he got inside the building, well, he just started cursing a blue streak, and everybody started yelling at him. And then he actually got hold of his weapon. He started firing it off at random. He hit one man in the toe. Well, people started yelling, throwing things at him, and he ran outside. But once he got outside, he took aim through the barracks window. And another guard saw this, and he brought up his weapon and fired. Now, I was hearing all this commotion. So I come tearing around the corner of the building at the exact same moment that other guard fired, and well, his bullet went right through my stomach, too. Well, they rushed me to the hospital, but there wasn't anything they could do about it. And by morning, I was gone. Mustered out before I even got started, you might say. Being on that hilltop, you got a lot of time to think. And I got to wondering, the good book says that a man has no greater love than he lay down his life for a friend. Does the same hold true if you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time? Yeah. If you get that one figured out, stop by and let me know. Let us rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We'll gather from the hillsides, we'll rally from the plains, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the tyrant and up with the star. Let us rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We are springing to the call from the east and from the west, shouting the battle cry of freedom, and we'll prove a loyal crew to the land we love the best. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. Colonel Caleb Carleton, Commanding Officer, 8th U.S. Cavalry, Fort Meade, South Dakota. It's long been a privilege and an honor of mine to serve in our nation's military, a career that started in 1859 as a young lieutenant out in Oregon. I did serve during the Civil War, rising to command the 89th Ohio Volunteer Infantry. I also served as a prisoner of war during that conflict. But by 1892, I had risen to become a full colonel and was given command of the 8th U.S. Cavalry, Fort Meade, South Dakota. While my wife and I were here, we developed the custom of sitting on our porch in the evenings and just talking about the events of the day. When one night I noticed she was quieter than usual. And when I pressed her on the matter, she said that she was disturbed by the casual disrespect being shown to our nation's flag by the troops of the post. Well, we talked about that for a time, and then the subject turned to the fact that America did not even have a national anthem. I mean, can you imagine this? 1892. We had been a country for nearly 120 years and still no national anthem. Well, we talked about different songs that we thought would be appropriate for that position. When Sadie mentioned one of her favorites, a very popular song of the day entitled The Defense of Fort McHenry. Or perhaps you know another title, The StarSpangled Banner. Well, I thought that was a capital idea. I too liked the flag and that song. I ordered the band to begin learning it. And then one evening in October, when the troops gathered for retreat, that evening ceremony where the flag is lowered for the night, the band played the Star-Spangled Banner. My daughter, Mabel, recorded in her journal that as the final notes faded away, the flag landed gently in the arms of the waiting troops. If it had been practiced, it could not have been done more perfectly. Oh, I had also ordered that all within hearing were to stand out of respect for the flag, and all men not under arms were to remove their hats. Further, whenever the Fort Meade Band did a concert, there was a note in the program stating that the final number performed would be the Star-Spangled Banner, and asking everyone in the audience to follow the same courtesies. Oh, word of our practice spread, and eventually the Secretary of War, Daniel Lamont, ordered the Star-Spangled Banner to be played every evening in all U.S. military installations. And then in 1931, nearly 40 years after we got it started just down the road at Fort Meade, Congress voted unanimously to make the Star-Spangled Banner our national anthem. Sadie often said the reason she liked that song so much was because of the story behind it, the why it was written. Unfortunately, I think that's a story that is not told much anymore, and so with your permission, I would like to share that with you now. To do that, we go back to the year 1812, and once again, a very young America found itself at war with Great Britain. And for 2 years, we held off the greatest military power on the face of this planet. But by 1814, we were getting tired. The sheer size, the might of the British Navy was wearing us down. And then on August 24th, 1814, the unthinkable happened. The British captured and burned Washington, D.C. And their fleet set sail up Chesapeake Bay towards the town of Baltimore. You see, they had a plan in motion. Troops from Canada were coming south. Troops that had landed further south were coming north. And if they could capture Baltimore, it would split the country in two. And the rest of it would be easy pickings. But to do that, they had to get past Fort McHenry that guarded the mouth of the harbor. September 13th. Their ships were moving in position for the attack when a small American vessel flying a flag of truce sailed into their midst. On board was a young American lawyer, Francis Scott Key. Now, he was there to negotiate the release of a prisoner, a friend of his, an old and very sick doctor. Well, permission was granted, but because of the impending attack, they would not be allowed to return to shore until it was over. So as evening began to settle, that small group of Americans sat surrounded by the British Navy. But whenever they looked towards Fort McHenry, they could see their flag flying over the walls. And then it began. Those massive British guns erupted with fury, hurtling their shells against the walls of Fort McHenry, and the fort would return fire, and back and forth the battle raged until darkness fell. But even then, the guns continued to fire, and occasionally, as a shell exploded in the air, they would catch a glimpse of the flag blowing in the wind. But then came the dawn, and all the guns fell silent. And the question on everyone's lips was, is the flag still flying? Because if Fort McHenry had surrendered during the night, if they had lowered the flag, it probably meant they no longer had a country to go back to. That old doctor, too sick to even get up from his bed, he just asked over and over again, "Is it there? Is it there?" Francis Scott Key looked towards Fort McHenry, and what he saw so inspired him that he grabbed a scrap of paper, a pencil from his pocket, and he wrote down this line, "Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?" the first line of a poem that he entitled The Defense of Fort McHenry. But very soon it was changed to the Star-Spangled Banner. You know, the first verse of that poem tells the story of that battle throughout the night. And in it we also hear an echo of that doctor's question, is it there? Is the flag still flying? Well, if you are able, I invite you now to please stand with me and join in singing the first verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you. Please be seated. You know, it has often intrigued me that typically that is the one verse that we sing, and it is a verse that ends in a question. Is the flag still there? Well, imagine for a moment that you're on board that American vessel. The guns are silent, but the smoke from the battle is still very thick, heavy in the air, and a mist is rising from the waters. The sun is just coming up over the horizon. The second verse tells us what we see when we look towards Fort McHenry. On the shore dimly seen, through the mists of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in dread silence reposes. But what is that which the breeze o'er the towering steep, as it fitfully blows, now conceals, now discloses? But now it captures the gleam of the morning's first beam, in full glory reflected, that now shines on the stream. It is the Star-Spangled Banner, oh long may it wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. The flag was still there, and America was going to live. And in the final verse of the song, we hear Key's hopes, his dreams, yes, his prayer for his young country. Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation, blessed with victory and peace, may our heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. And then conquer we must, when our cause it is just. And this be our motto, in God is our trust. And that Star-Spangled Banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home the brave. Well, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you a bit of our area's history. And in parting, I'd like to leave you with one last tradition of the Frontier Army. Back then, the men rarely said goodbye to each other. Communication was very slow. At times of the year, it was virtually non-existent. And so, if a troop was being moved to another post, an officer was being transferred, well, there was a good chance you were never going to see or hear from them again. Instead of goodbye, the men of Fort Meade simply said, "Till our next posting." Thank you all very much. Are there any questions that I can try to answer here?
Everybody's speechless.
Thank you all very much for coming. I'll be up here in front if you would like to stop and talk with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.